So I am extremely concerned about the fact that the party that I was a part of for a very long time, that was supposed to be the party of fiscal responsibility, just passed this massive, pork-laden, ginormous bill because it adds so much to the debt and deficit. So my issues with this bill are specifically about the amount of spending that is still in this bill for projects that they had to throw in to buy the votes from certain members of the House and the Senate. And that's how the sausage is made in Washington, D.C.
Mostly anything can be grown in a pot because it's an annual. We're only hanging out in these pots for like 3 or 4 months once they're in bloom. So most vegetables can be grown in containers. You just have to pick the right size of the container. But I wouldn't say there's anything that can't be grown in a pot.
His first ever mission, rescue swimmer, and he is credited with helping save 165 people, predominantly from Camp Mystic, predominantly young children.
Hi, everybody. It's time for another exciting edition of Mandy and Deb. I happen to be Mandy Connell, and this happens to be
Deborah Flora, my friend Mandy.
My friend Deb.
There
and
you
together, we make the magic that is the Mandy and Deb Show.
Yes.
And today, we've got some very interesting stuff to talk about. And if you are of a certain age and maybe you're gardening curious, we have a guest for you to help you explore your gardening side. But of course,
it doesn't have to do with age. If you're gardening challenged, like I am, and you want to learn how to keep things alive.
Wait, is that a black thumb I'm seeing at the end of your finger? Is that what I'm seeing?
I've been
We're gonna find out.
Oh my goodness.
But first.
Yes, first we're going to talk about some issues that are going on in our country. And that's why I've got the handy dandy clicker, because we've got issues. Here on the show and elsewhere, we have issues. But we want to talk about a few things. Obviously, the number one story, and our hearts are going out, as I know many of yours are, is what is going on in Texas right now. So we are going to talk about that. But before we get to that, which is really the most heartfelt portion, we're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill. We're going to talk about whether that's beautiful. We're going to talk about the Epstein files, mixing this up a little bit, getting sort of spicy, and then the Texas floods.
I am super salty right now.
Okay,
and
bring it on.
I am super salty right now for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
One, you brought up the big, beautiful bill.
Yes.
I've been calling it the big, not so beautiful bill on my show. And I should say in full explanation, because I think this is an important part of my issue, is that I am what you would call a fiscal hawk. And in my opinion, in my view, there is nothing that is more critical to the United States of America than beginning to do something about our debt. If you look at history is littered with empires who eventually spent themselves into oblivion. Yes, they might have been conquered by the Goths, but the reality is they ran out of money to pay their own soldiers, which is why they were conquered by the Goths. So I am extremely concerned about the fact that the party that I was a part of for a very long time, that was supposed to be the party of fiscal responsibility, just passed this massive, pork-laden, ginormous bill because it adds so much to the debt and deficit. So my issues with this bill are specifically about the amount of spending that is still in this bill for projects that they had to throw in to buy the votes from certain members of the House and the Senate. And that's how the sausage is made in Washington, D.C. Now, on the other side, I can totally appreciate the fact that this bill, because it is enormous, it touches everything. It touches so many different policy areas in the United States of America that I think need to be tightened up. So I'm happy about that. Hate the spending, love a lot of the content, but I am also one of those people. I'm like, hashtag Thomas Massey, I love you. I want to go back to the days where we had 12 different budget bills. It's called regular order for a reason.
Absolutely.
So those are kind of my beefs. a little bit right now. I'll just hold fire on the rest of that.
Well, there you go. So I'm going to pick up that fire and I'm going to continue with it because I don't disagree. I'm going to talk about some things I like, some things I don't like. When I ran for Congress, one of the number one things I kept talking about is I don't like omnibus spending bills, period. It's been a long time since Congress has done their job. They've not passed a budget for over 20 some years now. I've lost track. And can you imagine if, like in the state that we live in here in Colorado, you've single subject bills, which means you look at it, it's not 1,000 pages long, you actually know what's in it, and then you have to debate on the merits of the spending. You can only stuff all that pork in when it's 1,000 pages long. I mean, you know, the COVID bill, for instance, just one of my little nuggets that I like to bring up that was in there was family planning for Burma in the middle of the COVID bill. Now, there are some positive things, and I do agree with that. I would like to get back to when Congress actually does their job. And by the way, it's funny, when I talked about that, I get so much pushback. Oh, we can't do that. It would take too long. I'm like, longer than reading 1,000 pages? You don't like it because you'd have to justify each thing. Now, here's where I think it's good. Some fiscal hawks, and I'm a fiscal hawk also, I often say, you know, if we don't address our debt, which is going over $37 trillion now, that is immoral to pass it on to our kids. As a mom, that is wrong. I do like, though, that it actually, and this is where it's getting a lot of criticism, addresses some of the things that are bloating our budget, which are some of these programs like Medicaid and SNAP. Now, before everybody freaks out, when you look at what they're actually doing, the cuts, they're actually doing things like requiring work for able-bodied adults after 64 years old. I think that's called life for most of us, and I think it's a good thing. Now, there are other things that I think, you know, we can talk about, but I do like those cuts. I like the cuts on the Green New Deal energy because, you know what, let the marketplace, you know, play itself out. If EVs are the way to go, then they'll work free without your and my tax dollars, you know, basically supporting or tipping the scales or playing favorites. So there's some things I like in there. I do like that our defense has increased. They're increasing shipbuilding.
Border security,
all of that. You know, when I think about shipbuilding, I think about when we went to Pearl Harbor with our family. They couldn't repair the loading dock for the memorial over the Arizona for 4 years. When we were in World War II, when we were brought in and they destroyed basically the Pacific Fleet, we rebuilt that in a matter of months. We need to get back to where we can do that. So I like that. I like some of the cuts, but I don't like big, not so beautiful anything. No omnibus spending bills. Got to get rid of them.
A lot of people about this bill are saying that it is fundamentally reshaping the policy of the United States. And there's a lot of very business-friendly policies in this. And for people like me who have been, I try to read people who are making the other argument to see, okay, what am I missing here? And one of the main arguments that I saw being made specifically was, for people who are worried about the fiscal hawk part, this bill is designed to explode growth in the United States of America. But the one area where I have to say I have some concern is so much of our growth in this country is tied to the housing market. Now, not directly building houses, but when people buy a new house, they tend to buy a new bed, they buy new furniture, they get paint, they do all of these other things. So all of this secondary economy in the housing market. If we don't show some real seriousness about spending, our mortgage rates are going to stay persistently higher than they are right now. Now, we're actually in a period of the national average for mortgage rates. The national average is about 7%, but we got super spoiled and people are kind of sitting on the sidelines. So I would love to see anyone in government other than Thomas Massie and Rand Paul talk about the fact that we cannot continue to go down this path. Even if we love, as I do, a lot of the parts of the bill, I'm super concerned about the end results.
Well, and I do think you bring up a great point because it's kind of that inverse relation. When you do tax cuts for individuals, and this makes those Trump tax cuts permanent, there are tax cuts for seniors, there are different things in there like that. That actually, and we saw it in the Reagan years after, you know, Carter, which was a more similar time to what we've been walking into here, that actually increased the income of the government, even though taxes were less because people were making money. And I am for that. I do think, though, this is hopefully only the first step to bigger cuts because we can't sustain $37 trillion. It grows $1 trillion every 100 years. 100 days.
I wish it was 100 years. I mean, that would be amazing.
I am speaking out what I wish. Every 100 days, it goes up $1 trillion. So we have to watch that. So, okay, so good, bad, a kind of not, what do we call it, the big mediocre bill? Yeah,
could go
pros
one
and
way, could
cons.
go the other. I hope I'm wrong. Let me be clear about
Yes.
that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about all my negative Nelly stuff. I hope I'm completely wrong. I just don't think I am. Okay.
Yes.
Can I talk about the second thing that's making me salty?
Yes, let's get off
This
your
has
chest
been
here.
aggravating me more and more and more and more and more as I think about it. This week, the FBI and the Department of Justice came out and said, hey, about Jeffrey Epstein, yeah, he totally killed himself, and there's no Epstein client list. So now, as an American, I'm supposed to believe that Jeffrey Epstein, who we already know, got a sweetheart deal in 2008, even though he was abusing young women back then, because the prosecutor in charge was told he's with intelligence. We know that this man had cameras in every single room in his homes where prominent men came through quite often. We knew prominent men flew on airplanes to an island that was outside the purview of American law enforcement to do whatever. And the only person that's in jail right now is a woman who was put in jail for child sex trafficking that allegedly now never occurred.
Right.
This is a two-tiered system of justice. It is infuriating. And I got to tell you, I'm super glad that so many people are as upset about it as I am. And at this stage in the game, I don't even know if there's anything left. I don't know if people got rid of evidence, but we're talking about men who are incredibly well connected, some of the wealthiest men in the world.
Yes.
And there's nothing's going to happen. It's not okay.
And I agree with you. And what I think about this is not partisan. It doesn't matter. I mean, under the past administration, it didn't even get this far. Under this administration, it's now being shut down. I mean, there's one of two scenarios happening here. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, first said, oh, guess what? That file, that Epstein list is right on my desk. And now she's saying, oh, I just meant the files were on my desk, but it doesn't prove anything. Here's the problem. I think no matter what's true, and we may never know, and that's the big problem, the sinking of confidence that justice will be done, particularly for those who are powerful and with money, is not a good thing for our country. I mean, it is really important that people begin to feel that we are a nation of laws, that no one is above it. I mean, I think about Harvey Weinstein. I mean, he was the untouchable guy in Hollywood. And, having been there for a little while, hashtag recovered actress in my left brain, my right mind from Colorado. It's a really long hashtag. But,
it is a little wordy.
I'll try to shorten that.
Yeah.
I'll do an acronym. But anyway, I remember being at an Academy Award reception with him. Everybody knew this guy was no good. They knew it. And it was a great day for justice when someone that was considered to be untouchable was no longer untouchable. And we've got to make sure that we have a justice system that is not two-tiered, as you said.
Exactly. This has been, I've been super aggravated about this.
I agree.
So let's move on to something that's actually sadder and worse, but also aggravating.
But more heartfelt.
Yes.
And something that, doesn't involve kind of the sliminess of what we were just discussing. So, and that is the flooding in Texas. We started talking about that at the beginning, and I'm old enough to remember the 1976 Big Thompson Canyon flood that happened here in Colorado. And I understood at that time how it happened. You go through this canyon and it just suddenly fills it. But what was crazy to read about in Texas was the waters rose 26 feet in an hour or 2 hours approximately, which is why people were absolutely, caught off guard. And of course, the worst thing when you see the images, and I can't look at them too much, but are all the beautiful children from Camp Mystic whose lives were taken. And, I cannot even imagine as a parent what those parents are going through right now. I would hope would be the default that all of us would have when we see tragedy, particularly with children, but that's not
adorable.
the case.
That's adorable, Deborah, Flora.
I'm so old-fashioned.
You are so cute with your, can people be decent for 5 minutes? I mean.
So sorry.
And
get me up to date.
Yeah, and when we're filming this, there's still over 100 people missing. Mm-hmm. So there's over 100 people confirmed dead. We already know that. So we're still in the midst of cleaning up after this horrific event. But boy, never let a crisis go to waste. Those infamous words by Rahm Emanuel have come through, but it's not from the usual suspects. Sure, it's pundits on CNN and MSNBC who are trying to blame budget cuts, which have not taken effect yet.
Or just blame Trump, which, whether you like him or not, he does not, this is considered an act of God, although I think God has great mercy and doesn't want this to happen. he's not God. Trump did not make the floodwaters rise. So there we go.
We've had a couple, more than one instance of people really showing how nasty they can be. There was a woman in Houston. She was appointed to a post by the mayor of Houston, and she felt the need to take to social media to talk about the fact that all of these children were just white. It was, you had to be white to go to this camp. And if these little girls were brown, then it wouldn't matter and no one would care. And it was just so ridiculous and absurd that her white reverend of the Unitarian Universalist Church was forced to come out and disavow her comments to his congregation and apologize and do all of this stuff. She doubled down.
Yeah,
it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think is most disturbing about this. There's enough of a tragedy, but if we can't all come together and just be human beings, putting out caring and support for human beings. By the way, if you want to do something, join the hundreds of volunteers, by the way, that are down there right now. But there's another story like that that absolutely gets me. A pediatrician, you look at her picture, she looks like your nice mom next door in a suburban community. She actually said that she only hopes the non-MAGA people are doing okay and are warm and dry and everyone else got what they deserved. Now, here's the only positive part I'd say, Mandy, is I think the vast majority of people are waking up and saying, this is not okay. The woman you talked about, who was an appointee, she's not being appointed again. The pediatrician who said this heinous thing not only was decried from what she said widely, she is no longer working at that pediatric clinic, at that practice, and they're even looking into whether or not she should maintain her license. So when you look at that, and then all the people that jumped out against those who are calling it Trump's fault, politicization, global warming, you get what you voted for, there's been a huge reaction against it. My hope is that's the beginning of people saying enough is enough.
Right. We can let this crisis go to waste.
Yes,
Can we talk about something that's not horrible for a moment?
Yes,
let's do, because we've got stuff,
We've got
gentlemen.
stuff, and I clicked it right there.
And I am so excited to have our next guest on, because I don't know if you know this, but several years ago, I began my gardening journey. And I say journey because gardening is a journey. It is not something, it's not a straight line. It's not linear. There's not a whole lot you can do to force the process.
Yeah.
And as I do this, I just very, very quickly have to make sure I have our guest's name, because I know Audrey's first name, but I don't know Audrey's second name. She's with the amazing Plum Creek Nursery family. They're outstanding. Plum Creek Market. They have, if you've never been there, they're a smaller chain here in Colorado. They are magnificent. They have everything that a gardener needs, but Audrey is also incredibly, incredibly smart. So Audrey, first of all, welcome to the show.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for that, Mandy.
Well, you guys are so smart. And this is the thing about gardening. And gardening is, you're like, what are we doing talking about gardening? I actually think that we're seeing, especially among younger people, my son and his wife, they have a massive vegetable garden. They're canning their vegetables. So younger people are looking for a little bit of self-sustainability, right? They're looking for something. It's almost like the victory gardens back in World War I. And I wanted to ask Audrey, is that accurate? Are you seeing younger people?
I think there's a homestead revolution. I think a lot of these new homeowners, especially the younger people, they like to spend time at their homes. So they're throwing money into their own investment and they're hanging out in the backyard with their friends. I mean, I totally see a difference. I think COVID helped. But the last few years, I think maybe if we got 50% that held on strong, they're continuing with that hobby that they picked up during COVID because we had nothing to do.
Great.
And just like you said, Mandy, it never stops. No. You can always make it bigger, better.
One of the things I love about gardening in Colorado is it's a finite amount of time, right? Just as you get sick.
Love those winter breaks.
Yes,
exactly.
Just as you get tired
at some point.
Pruning and doing everything. It's like, oh, winter's here to take care of this for me. But let me ask, what do you recommend if somebody comes into your garden center and says, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to start gardening, like my friend Deborah, who has a black thumb. How do you, tell me what beginning gardening 101 would look like.
I think just a few questions. Your main thing you want to consider is sun or shade. You don't want to kill your shade, and anything that needs sun isn't going to flourish in shade. So I think that's the number one thing we start with. And then we just ask, what are you looking for? Do you want to establish a full garden that's going to keep coming back for you every year? Or do you want to see color all summer? And that dictates if you're shopping perennials or annuals. but you got to start somewhere. So just start now and come in and talk to us, especially while it's slow. We have so many informed, educated. I mean, some of these people, I mean, I'm so lucky to have them. They've been in this for 4 decades. They've got the answers for you.
That's
So come in and
great.
talk
You
to
know,
us.
and
Start
one of the things
there.
I wanted to ask, because I got into gardening, my story's a little bit, not so
She was
blooming.
growing weed. No, I'm kidding. She was not growing weed. She was not growing
True
weed.
Colorado.
I was known as Sandra D most of my life. So no, so funny. The first time I grew something was when my husband and I first got married. I'm like, I'm going to see if I can keep a plant alive, and if so, we can have children, because that means I'm able to keep things alive. Of course, I picked a
Totally.
bougainvillea, which you can't
Oh,
kill.
bougainvillea.
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
But
They
here
shouldn't
in
even sell them here.
Yeah, they
You
should.
got tricked.
I know, right? But here's the question, because the climate here is so different. It's dry, it's clay, it's all these kind of different things. So what do you recommend? Like, what native plants really work well in this climate? And I'm looking for simple.
Yeah, I think you nailed it just by native plants. These are drought tolerant just by the name. These are things that are supposed to withstand the droughts that we have. They come back bigger and better. And one of the things you can do, you know, if you've got a garden going, but you slowly maybe want to move to those xerics and those natives to become more drought tolerant, just start with the furthest area of your property that the hose doesn't reach to. And that alone will show you how great and gangster these plants are. And you just want to keep adding them to it. So
Oh, no, I was going to say,
we have such a great environment for anything. I mean, but just come talk to us. Tell us what you're looking for.
can I ask
But
you about a
you
gardening?
really can't go wrong.
Oops, sorry. Can I ask you about a gardening trend that I just found out about that I'm a little bit obsessed with because it is so Colorado centric? Are you guys talking about crevice gardening at all? Are you aware of this?
Oh, wow. Tell
It
me.
sounds
I think
sexy,
I
but
might
it's
do
not.
crevice gardening myself, Mandy, and not know that there was a movement about it. Is
Yes.
it when you just plant things in the cracks of your driveway or here and there?
No, that would be nice because I've been
No,
doing
I
that for
just let
years.
those grow. I think they're weeds, but I just let them go. No,
They're
I'm just
plants.
kidding.
It all counts. No, crevice gardening
Even
is
weeds are plants. They're just
There
in
you
the
go.
wrong location.
There you go.
as you put you put landscapings like flat stones up like this to kind of
Yeah.
mimic our alpine climate. So the plants grow in these crevices and they send roots way, way down, and therefore it needs way less water. And it's a more natural way to grow our native plants. And I watched the whole thing on it on YouTube because, of course, you learn everything on YouTube. And now I kind of want to do like a big section of my front yard like that. And I didn't know if
Me
I was
too.
ahead of the
I'll have to look
trend.
up these videos. You're the first one to tell me about this, Mandy. You're a trendsetter, girl.
Let's
I'm going
see
to
if I
have to
can pull
look
it
up
off.
these YouTube videos.
Are there
But for
better,
sure, it sounds
are-
like it's working.
Are there better veggies in Colorado? And I specifically want to ask two things. Number one, just veggies overall. What doesn't grow here and what does? And number two, what are things that people can grow in pots that they can eat?
Mostly anything can be grown in a pot because it's an annual. You know, we're only hanging out in these pots for like 3 or 4 months once they're in bloom. So most vegetables can be grown in containers. You just have to pick the right size of the container. But I wouldn't say there's anything that can't be grown in a pot. I mean, even those vines of loofah, they can start in a pot. You can do tomatoes, and specifically too, if you're shopping for vegetables and you live in an apartment or a condo or have limited space and you want to be pot specific, you're looking for bush vegetables. These are the ones that stay compact: tomatoes, beans, peppers. They don't get all crazy and tall. These stay compact for plant or for pots. So that's a fantastic option if they happen to have any of those varieties. But we're in Colorado, high altitude. So we're lucky, even though we have a short season, we're lucky that everything sees the sun so intensely. Peppers, tomatoes, green onions, they come back for you every year. I mean, chives, basil would be the only thing I would say. You know, the dainty leafies are high altitude. Once we hit June and July, you kind of want to protect. Maybe put them in your shade area of your garden, or just put something bigger, taller to cast a shadow on it to protect it from that west side sun. But I think we're pretty unlimited. Just know that we're annuals here. So not everything's going to come back for you every year.
Right.
Well, here's a question for you. Even though I come from a long line of farmers in Iowa, that is not me, and my husband does as well. But so once you buy the plant, let's say, you know, you go and you talk to people like yourself, and then you get the right things. Where do people go? Where would you recommend if they're like their plant needs help or they're not sure they're taking care of it right? What are some good resources?
I'm so glad you asked that. I think not a lot of people are knowledgeable that CSU offers free advice in their neighborhood. I think there's It's called CSU Extension. Just like the libraries are kind of randomly throughout neighborhoods, CSU Extension has locations up and down the Front Range throughout the metro neighborhood. I live in Platt Park. I have one just a couple blocks from me at Harvard Gulch. And there you can go. I think they just have regular hours, maybe like 8 to 5. But these are master gardeners volunteering their own time. Some of these are retired teachers. Everybody has specialties. You know, if you get lucky, you might have 3 volunteers there that day. So somebody might specialize in trees, somebody might specialize in vegetables, perennials, whatever you're interested in. But this is free. And this is totally offered to residents of Colorado. Wherever you live, there's got to be one close. I would start there. Take advantage of the free stuff that's offered to you. Second, just find a garden center. Definitely us if we're open, but we are seasonal. We've got our Greenwood Village location open late, but Littleton is open until the end of Sunday. So if you've got a problem today, we're open till 6. Come and talk to us. We're back in there at 9 tomorrow. Take pictures is my only advice. But it's a free consult. Questions are free. We're happy to answer any questions or problems that you guys have. But CSU is awesome, guys.
I got one last question for you, and that is, this is like, we're at the end of July already. So if somebody is like, I'm inspired by this and I want to go out and buy a plant, is it too late to start something?
No.
Should you go buy something that's fully grown and just try to keep it alive until the end of the season?
Absolutely. And you know what? At our Littleton market, it's buy 1, get 2 free. So 3 for 1. It's the best time to go load up on those perennials. You don't see them on sale like this heavy right now. But I need to get out of there. We're a temporary pop-up, so my lease is ending. So I'm really giving it to you guys. I mean, take advantage of that. Come shop for the discounted plants right now. It is not too late. We've been taking care of them for you at the market. You just got to bring them home and get them in the ground.
And I have one more specific question because that's perfect. So this spring, our neighbor had all these beautiful bulbs that were coming up, the daffodils, the tulips, all of that. And I always miss this season because they obviously planted them sooner. When do you plant those if I want to start those for next spring?
I think you would wait for it to get a little cool, but September to December is bulb season. So you want to make sure those are in ground by New Year's Eve. And it's easier if you choose a warm day so you're not shoveling in ice-packed ground. But just choose a warm day, warmish.
Audrey Sharp from Plum Creek Market or Garden Market, Plum Creek Garden Market. I say it wrong every single time. Thank you so much. And if everybody there is as knowledgeable as you, anybody can grow anything. And here's the one thing I will say I have learned about gardening, and a gardener friend of mine said it. Gardening is all about one thing: patience. You can't rush the process. So
half science, half magic.
Yeah, there you go. Audrey, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you, Audrey. Well, patience may be the reason why I'm not so good at it.
There are things that you plant one year and you literally just have to wait until the next year to see what's going to happen. And I did not believe that. And then I redid a bed last year. And you guys, I felt like Martha Stewart when I got done redoing this bed. I was also exhausted for like 4 days. But this year, it looks amazing. Yeah. Last year, it looked okay. This year, it looks amazing. You just have to be patient.
So I think it's a Mandy and Deb road trip. We're going to go shop, we'll take film and all that. Okay, we are winding it up because we've got good news. This is the part of the show where we talk about the good news that's out there because there are so many amazing people, Mandy, we talk about this all the time, that are doing great things. And then there are also those who really stand out in times of great trial. So a couple of the good news stories I want to share are 2 heroes from the Texas floods. Many people have heard about the 74-year-old gentleman whose family had run Camp Mystic all of these years, Dick Eastland, and he did not make it. He ended up giving his life, everyone said, by helping others get out of the danger area, particularly so many of the children. And I love what one former camper said. They said, Dick was the father figure to all of us while we were at Camp Mystic. He was a father of 4 boys, but also they said he was like a father to hundreds of young girls that were there all the time. So he gave his life. Another person that I just love this, what he said about it is 26-year-old Scott Ruskin.
Oh, I love this story
Many
so much.
people know he is a Coast Guard rescued swimmer. And I like this too because the Coast Guard of all the branches of the military usually gets overlooked. My dad was Air Force, my husband Army, my father-in-law Navy, and we kind of just, we like the Coast Guard. But this guy, his first ever mission rescue swimmer. And he is credited with helping save 165 people, predominantly from Camp Mystic, predominantly young children. And I love what he says, because he says this, and this is such the warrior ethos. You know, the true heroes are not prideful. He actually said, I'm just a dude doing my job. It's what we do. But then he also said this, as he's talked more about it. He said the real heroes were the kids. And he said they were amazing in this time and they stayed calm. He said they inspired him to keep going and keep getting more. And those are the kind of stories, those heroes, some everyday heroes, the camp counselor who gave his life, or someone who I am so grateful our military made up of people like Scott Ruskin, who just considered it his job to go into danger to help others or to protect our country. So those are two good news stories.
And that's what he signed up for.
Yes, it is.
It didn't happen to him. That is what he signed up for.
Yes, correct.
My story is a little bit different, and I want to start this in our good news segment by just doing a big old shout out to Steve Hartman from CBS News. He's the guy that does the good news stories for CBS Sunday Morning and CBS Evening News. And if you're just looking for something upbeat, go find any of Steve Hartman's stories and they will make your day. And this is one of his stories that I wanted to pull because it's so sweet. And the story itself is about a young woman who had kind of withdrawn after middle school, which is so common for some high school students. They start having anxiety. They don't feel like they fit in. They kind of withdraw into their own shell. She went to a relatively small school. There was a graduating class of 110 students. And towards the end of the year, she decided that she was going to paint portraits. She painted portraits of all of her classmates individually, doing things that they loved to do. If they played football, they were in a football uniform. If they were in the band, they were with their instrument. And they're really quite good. They're beautiful portraits. But then she gave them to all the students. And it caused this really kind of wave of recognition among all the students that they had not done a good job, that they had been friends when they were younger, but in high school, they kind of fell apart. So it ended up being this really interesting lesson. And as I'm watching the story, I was like, oh, this poor girl. But then Steve interviewed her and she said, look, I didn't do a good job keeping in touch. I didn't do a good job reaching out, but I just wanted them to know how much they meant to me. And I thought, what a lovely gesture, first of all, but what a great way of reminding people, stop looking past people, stop looking through people. You know, remember to say hello and engage in all of those things. But I thought to myself, like, I can't paint. I can't paint. But what a wonderful honor. And I bet those kids keep those portraits forever.
Yeah, what a treasure and what an amazing way she did that. Because as we know, those years in high school and all that can be so challenging. And you think all these other things matter more, you know, how popular you are. She reminded them all what really matters, being seen. And you know what I love about that? She saw them. Each one of them must have felt like I was seen for who I am and what I'm interested in. So that's awesome. So my random act of kindness is not to paint a picture because I don't want to put pressure on you. No, it's really this. In light of what's going on in Florida, instead of being one of those people out there that's either quick to criticize
Texas.
or Florida.
She's brought a whole new state in here. And I'm like, wait.
No, I look at you and I think University of Florida, but that's a whole nother story.
Florida State.
Oh, I did it again.
Florida
I'm so sorry.
State
Okay,
University.
we're just going to end the show now.
No, but I have
Oh wait, but I have to finish this.
Okay,
Okay. So Texas, if you can't go down there, there are hundreds of volunteers right now who are going and helping, and I think that's amazing. We've seen this kind of rush in America after 9/11 and other things like that. But if you can't do that, then just donate. It doesn't have to be much. Two of the organizations that were there first were the Red Cross and Salvation Army, and we donated to the Salvation Army because they're right there. They're giving comfort to people. They are, providing a place for them to sleep. They're helping with the cleanup. They're doing all that. So not a lot. You could give $10, $5. You can skip a cup of coffee. Just be a part of the solution.
I personally recommend Samaritan's Purse because living in Florida, you deal with a lot of different kind of natural disasters, and they were the ones that I saw. They're the longest. They were the ones that were there long after everybody else, even FEMA, was gone. They're still in North Carolina helping clean up after those floods. So I love Samaritan's Purse. And so my random act of kindness is similar but totally different. Someone challenged me to do this, and it was really interesting. She teaches college classes, and she challenged her college students to find an organization that did charitable work on behalf of something they were interested in. And it could be racing cars, it could be knitting, it could be anything, whatever your interests are. And so all of her kids went out and Googled charities that do X, right? Only to find out there's tons of charities that do different things. If you're a knitter, they have knitting groups that knit things for little newborns in the NICU and things like that. And she just said, look, donating your time and being a supportive member of your community doesn't have to be something that feels like work. It can be something that already feels like something you love. So use the Google. I'm not even challenging you to join, right? But be aware of how you can take something that you're passionate about and you love to do, and you can do something really productive for someone else with it. So that is my challenge. Use the Google with something you love to find out if they have a charitable organization and maybe consider joining or donating some money to something you enjoy.
I love that. I love that. We have one other thing for you to do, which is make sure to click subscribe right down there so you get all of the shows coming in, the Mandy ampersand Deb, we're fancy with the ampersand, Mandy and Deb shows, and follow the other shows on IITV because there's some great shows out there. And please follow us on social media, on Facebook at Mandy ampersand Deb. And you can stay in touch. Give us your ideas for heroes, everyday heroes of the week, acts of kindness, things you want us to talk about, because after all, this is your show, even though
it's called Mandy and Deb.
even though.
It's named after us. But it's your show.
There it is. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we just hope you have a great time until we see you next.